Okay, I'm Holloway with Schloegel Painting Services, and we're going to walk you through some of the processes we use when we refinish cabinets. Specifically, we're going to be dealing with the golden oak cabinets that many of you have. I've had these myself. But there's a lot of things that you can do with these cabinets short of replacing them. And if that's where your options take you, I'm going to show you what you can do with these kinds of cabinets. Now, these are in really rough shape, but they'll turn out really nicely. The first process or step that we go through when we begin this process is we remove any of the waxy surface that's on the outsides of the surfaces, the grime, anything like that, even before we sand them, because if you just go right into sanding the surface, if there's grime on it, it just gums up the sanding pad and you just go over and over again. So our first step is we use a very high strength cleaner degreaser, and we put it on heavy and work it into every crevice. I'm going to leave this half dry for presentation purposes because I'm going to show you the next step on this door is to skim coat over the graining, particularly on oak cabinets. The graining can show very prevalently if you don't level it before going to a solid finish. And that's what we're doing here, is we're taking these from a stained surface to a very smooth enamel surface, a solid color. And when you go that direction, the color options that you have are endless. If it's in a paint chart, you can go that color with these cabinets. Alright, so that's the first step, is just get that on there, let it soak and do its thing. It will evaporate. And again, we're going to leave this half dry so I can show you the next step on it. The next step, once this is dry, we'd normally sand this surface and then move into this step. There's several steps of sanding, so I'm just going to show you here is lightly stuff, getting all of the corners, the sharp edges, the inside edges. And the profile here has a tendency to collect grime through the years, and you want to make sure all of that is gone. Alright, so you get the idea. It takes longer than that, and we do a more professional job when we're doing it, but I'm just trying to get this so you can see the process and see the steps that it takes to do. Once that's sanded, we'll get rid of the dust on the surface, so I can move to the next step. And the next step is to skim coat. And what skim coating is going to do is fill all of these grain pores that you're going to see if you don't smooth that entire surface. So this is wood filler, and that's what we use for our skim. And it's nothing scientific, it's just a matter of making sure you fill the grain. And you also know that whatever you put on here, you're going to sand through. So you can kind of control how heavy this goes on. If it takes 2 layers, it might take a second layer. But it's easier to sand if you go in smaller steps and try to do it all at once. And this is going to look bad at this stage, because my primary focus is just filling the grain on the flats. I'm not worried about what's slopping over at this point. I'll fix that before it sets. There's some hardware holes that I'm going right over right here. I can poke those out once this dries when I'm in sanding mode to reopen them, so I'm not concerned about them right now. Alright. Once I get the flats covered with a layer, I'll focus on the profiles and the curves. I'm going to have to use my finger to apply it in there and spread it. So you take all of this and you're going to just get it smeared in there all the way around the perimeter. Again, knowing that you're going to come back and sand this, so you can be a little bit careful if you choose to, so it's easier to sand. Always leave stuff out of this crevice where the inset panel meets the outside framework. You want that to be open and clear, so as moisture expands and temperature expands and contracts the wood, it has the ability to do that without buckling anything that you're covering in that surface. That's if you're going to enamel these. Alright, I'm not going to spend more time on that because I've done that over here, and I'll show you what we end up. But this is the part where we skim coat it. This is a door from the exact same cabinetry. So what I've done on this door, you can see, is I've sanded these flat surfaces. For demonstration purposes, I've created a line down the center, because this side has been skim coated like this. It hasn't been sanded out yet. But I'm going to show the difference between how a cabinet appears once it's primed and enameled with the skim coated surface to get rid of the graining, or just going straight into primer and enamel on the oak grain without removing the graining or the texture of the grain. And you'll see the difference when this is finished, how smooth this side is. You'll see the indentations of the grain here. It's a big difference on how these cabinets are refinished and how some choose to and some choose not to. It's much more work to go this way, but the end result is tremendously better. So this is where this one is headed. And our next step on this one then is, once we get everything to this stage where it's been skim coated, I'm going to set this one aside now. We go into sanding what we applied after it's dried. And this is just to remove the primary surface of the filler without removing it completely. I want it to stay put in the graining so that it fills the grain and we aren't removing everything we just put back on. And again, on every curve and every inside corner edge surface. You want to pull anything more than just the wood itself out of there, so you've got a nice clean profile again. I'll use light circular motions on these flats after they've been filled with filler. It seems to smooth the entire surface a little better, and then as I get closer to the grain, as I'm sanding through the filler, I'll start sanding in the direction of the grain so I don't end up with strange scratch marks underneath the primer surface. So it's a lot of sanding, and I haven't gotten the profiles clean. I haven't done anything with those. These are going to be done with sandpaper rather than a sanding sponge, and then and this is a 220 grit sanding sponge. We do these with a 220 grit sandpaper next. Then it's ready for primer, and we have not got to that stage yet, but that would be our next process. It's priming these, and we'll sand them again, and then we'll go with the top coat and be finished.